Good morning.
Good morning.
So I have started a new habit inspired by my friend Sally that's in Wales. I have walked 5 miles a day for the last 20 days in a row. She's on day 70 something. As soon as they went on lockdown, she started walking. And I've noticed incredible mindset, energy, physical strength's coming, obviously, and my body is starting to get stronger. But I've noticed that my mood and my focus is so much better and amazing. So on my walk, I got to ponder our time together, and I was thinking about, the challenges of the pandemic and the terrible sadness that we have going on in the nation, and surely we'll have some positive change come from that time. And then I was thinking about how I'm hearing whispers from my neighbors about their businesses and what they will do, because we've gone from stay at home, shut down the business, are you essential, are you not essential, to in our area this past week, we've been under a curfew from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. And that creates incredible difficulty to scale business, to be able to plan, predict business. And, in business, when you're a business owner like we are, you have to be able to plan on bringing the revenue in so you can pay for all the expenses. And whether you bring in the revenue or not, the expenses are still due. So this creates a lot of challenges. And I was thinking about how I started. I have a few businesses, and how I started a treat business during this time, and how I have pivoted during the time of disruption. So obviously, we've had several disruptions in this 7-week period, 8-week period. So to business and daily life, and on a bigger scale, lots of disruptions. So I've thought about how I was able to pivot, and I went from, okay, I'm going to start a local bakery treat company. Okay, I can't do that now, so the restaurants are closing and they're under scrutiny and this and that. So then I pivot and I say, okay, then I'm going to find a co-packer, and I'm going to go into grocery stores, because I see grocery stores are essential. And it's been kind of a hobby of mine, since that was the only place that we could go for a while. It's like, oh, what do I need at the grocery store? Or, even a delivery. So I've pivoted several times, and I expect to continue to pivot and adjust as the environment and the market changes. I am using the startup time to really be flexible and learn to see where the opportunity is, and not get stuck on just one path, like, oh, okay, I can't do that, so I'm just not going to do it. No, I'm keeping my mind open and my options open to problem solving, and just pivoting a bit. And then the other business that I have, one of my main businesses, is real estate. One of my longtime business mentors called me this week and asked me if I would come back on a limited basis in a very specialized way to help grow the team. And I did agree to do that. So through time blocking, I will be working on that. And through proper delegation of administrative tasks, I will be doing that to also help our real estate business pivot and regrow and rebuild during this time as well. So I find it as an exhilarating challenge, and I use it as a inspiration to myself, and to see what challenges I can overcome.
So, what I love about what you're talking about, Mindy, is several things, right? First is, I think, just as somebody who thinks more psychologically, what you're talking about is what to do when there's a disruption, and when the disruption is unpredictable or unprecedented and you weren't prepared for it, right? And we had the pandemic, and then we had this period of time when little by little we were starting to open up our businesses. We were starting to feel hope, and we were starting to feel like, okay, we can slowly grow back into the business. And then something happens nationwide that is just so disruptive, so sudden. Again, it feels like what happened in the middle of March, where Friday I was in my office, working with clients, and by Monday, everything is gone online. And my business, I have offices, more than one, sitting, gathering dust. And all of a sudden we're in that same kind of, almost traumatic, unpredictable, overwhelming disruption. So you're describing how you stay positive, right? What you do when that happens to really begin to think outside the box. And what I like about what you said in terms of pivoting, and this is kind of my, I think, main point in today's talk, is pivoting doesn't mean you completely ditch one thing and move on to another thing. For some of us, that's possible, right? You may be forced to close your business. You may have to say, okay, I just got to close the books, close the door, walk away from this thing. And as a business owner, you never want to be married to the idea of a business at a huge cost to yourself. You always want to have a business or an entrepreneurship that you're willing to walk away from, because that is how you make some really wise decisions. Is this actually working? Am I putting more money in than I'm getting? Is this worth keeping, right? So some of us, that may be the decision we're having to make. But for other of us, and I'm in that boat, I can't. This is my only stream of income. And so whether it's a trickle or a gush, I got to be doing it. And I am shrinking and shrinking and trying to narrow and what's the word? Downsize everything I can think of downsizing, and keep my business alive so that I can survive this period. However, while I'm doing that, pivoting means thinking about, what can I do in my free time? How can I take my skills and talents that are in this area and think about, what other aspect, what other area can I apply my skills and talents to? How can I go looking outside of my profession or career path or business entity? Like, what is that, business area? I can't think of a better word for it, but what industry? There we go. How can I think of what is outside my industry that maybe could use somebody with my skills, talents, background, experience, that I can say, I can do 5 hours a week and I can do this one thing for you. And it just becomes a second source of income. Or even if it's not paying, it becomes something that you are doing that allows you to build connections, network, build, a possibility, build your skills and talents, so that down the road, it could be that you begin to say, I'm going to open a side business in this, right? And somebody, I don't remember who, that I was watching or reading recently talks about, we are now entering hustle economy, that we have a main hustle and maybe more than one side hustle, right? And that is going to be a sign of resilience if we can do that.
Absolutely. Well, and this time I'm grateful for as well, because of the stay in place. It allowed all of the driving around, all of the busy work came to a screeching halt, and it allowed us to start meeting on a weekly basis and putting together content that hopefully will help others and share with others on, business and mindset and growing and overcoming. So I'm grateful. I do my best to stay in gratitude for the gifts that have come from the difficult time.
I think that's what you're really, really good at, right? Between the two of us, I'm the one that's like, there are dark, stormy emotions, and we need to accept them, and we need to talk about them, and we need to put it out there. And you're like, no, let's keep it positive.
As much as possible in my life, and I don't know if it was learned or if I was born that way, but I really do like to reframe. And I was talking to my daughter the other day, and I've overcome a lot of challenges and adversities and outside disruptors, if you will, to even my childhood and my growing up was not like what you would, it wasn't picture book at all. So I think that those events in life have prepared me to be able to embrace and compartmentalize and focus when the outside disruptions happen, because they're not necessarily like COVID is, fortunately, I'm grateful. It's not happening directly to me. I am healthy. I am happy. I am doing my part by, social distancing and staying at home, things like that. So I am capable and able to work and use this free time to spend with my daughter and to work on some businesses that are important to me and work on myself. So I really do, as much as possible, try to focus on reframing. So what do you think about reframing? Is that a skill that you learn, or are you born with it, or both? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the way that I think about it is that babies, right? I'm always going back to babies. What do babies know how to do? If they know how to do it, then it's probably innate. It's probably built in.
Okay.
And then if babies don't know how to do it, we probably have to learn it. And so I think what babies know how to do is not necessarily reframing, but really moving on, letting the past be in the past and moving into the present. So you have a child who's incredibly upset about having lost a toy or not found something, or not being able to get what they want, and they can be intensely upset, devastated. My son, when he was 2 years old, we went to some concert in the park, and he had this little tiny stuffed animal that he carried everywhere with him. We got in the car, we came home, he was asleep, so we put him in the car ourselves, forgot his puffy in the park. And afterwards he was devastated. But he didn't stay devastated for very long. Right. His refractory period was short. Doesn't mean that he wasn't sad, doesn't mean it wasn't intense. So he would be devastated for 2 minutes, and then he would distract himself. He'd start playing, he would go somewhere, he would eat, he would watch a show, he would go outside and play, and he was fine for a while. And then he might remember Puffy and be devastated again, right? Mm-hmm. That's what babies know how to do. That's not necessarily reframing. I think reframing is what we learn when we have the higher cognitive intellectual abilities, which usually develop around age 10 to 12. And it doesn't develop exactly at the same time for everybody. So don't worry about it if you didn't get it until you were later. It just is an opportunity. We call them, I think John Piaget is a developmental psychologist who called it formal operational thinking. And basically, formal operational thinking simply means I can take something that is happening in the world and apply an intellectual operation to it. And I can do something with it. I can change the meaning of it. I can change how I see it. I can look at it from another angle, and I can say, this was devastating. On the other hand, this gave me all the time I needed to do blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The gift. As Tony Robbins says, and I'm a big fan, if you blame someone or something, you also have to thank them for helping you become the person that you are.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I tell people, I have been saying for a long time and praying for a long time, saying, I want more time. I remember before the pandemic actually saying, please give me abundance in the form of time and self-care. I don't need more money. And then the pandemic happened, my business tanked, and I went, oh, wait, I didn't mean that. I meant money and time. But you know what? It was like, I was telling people, if I didn't get this huge disruption, I probably would have complained for the rest of my life that I didn't have enough time. And I probably would keep saying, I wish I could do this other thing. I wish I could, change what I'm doing. I wish I could pivot. And it would just have stayed a wish, right? This that we're doing, we used to talk about it. And I used to say, oh my God, that's a great idea. I want to do it. And then I wouldn't have time, right? So sometimes great disruptions are really important for transformation.
Absolutely. TD Jakes had a powerful sermon that I'm incorporating in my story that I'm sharing. Growth in the dark place. Oh, wow. I encourage anyone that's interested to go Google TD Jakes' Growth in the Dark Place. And I've reflected on that on my walk as well. So, yes, there's growth in the dark place. For
You know,
sure.
there's a lot of spiritual, ancient wisdom from multiple spiritual traditions that talk about kind of that dark night of the soul, you know, when everything has fallen apart and you feel like I cannot handle this anymore. I cannot take this anymore. Just be still. And in that stillness, you're going to begin to hear a whisper. And then that whisper gets louder and louder if you pay attention to it. And it says, "This too shall pass. All will be well," right? This is going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And it may take you a while to believe that, but if you really pay attention to that whisper, that sound, that voice over and over and over again, what also begins to happen is a part of you that begins to awaken to say, yeah, if this too shall pass, then how can I make the most of what's going on right now? If all is going to be okay, maybe there's a lesson here for me. Maybe this is a good thing. And if I pay attention to the good thing that's happening right now, then it will pass, right? It's kind of that irony of if you pay attention to the negative, it'll last longer. If you pay attention to the positive, that will also last longer. So
Right. Yeah.
which one do you want to pay attention to?
Absolutely. When you said this too shall pass, I was having an exchange with my business mentor, and I showed him a picture of the tanks that were at the police department. And he said his response was so sad. And my response was, this too shall pass. So when you, that was just yesterday, I think. Yeah. So
Also,
how would
sorry.
you, sorry, we have a little delay.
No, I was just going to say, I think this is also a time for truth telling. So all of the images you're seeing, all of the videos you're seeing, I want you to just watch them and say, there is some truth here. And what is that truth? And if you just focus on the truth and forget about the rhetoric, the propaganda, the politics, the politicized, ranting and raving, just let that go. It's not yours. Just pay attention to the truth. And the truth is what allows you to take a step by step into the future.
Very nice. So for the people that don't feel like they learned reframe or they didn't develop reframing, how would someone, in a quick reset, we did a training last summer. How would you suggest someone would go about if they're in a funk, they're maybe feeling negative, they're watching a lot of the news, which that will definitely help you feel terrible if you want to feel terrible. How would you suggest that someone go about pulling themselves out of that mindset and reframing to positive so they can be clear about their goals and their focus and being able to show up as their best version of themselves so they can truly problem solve and not just pivot to make little adjustments for little band-aids, but truly pivot in a way that will be more fulfilling for them in their life? How would they go from, what would be the very first step if someone didn't naturally reframe to be able to positively pivot?
I think that's a great question. And I want to talk about it kind of conceptually, but I think you actually have a much more concrete answer. So I want to come back to that and ask you to answer the same question. But conceptually, the reason that we don't know how to reframe is because we are stuck in the action of the ego. The ego is the part of you, think of it as a protector that translates reality to you. So you're standing in some water, right? And the water is flowing around your ankles and it feels awesome. It's cool. It's, little ripply, little tickly. And then your ego comes in and it looks at the water and it says, what is this water? Where is this water coming from? Oh, my toilet is overflowing. I shouldn't be enjoying this water. Or I'm standing in a park and this is a little stream and it's beautiful to just stick my feet in this water, or I'm in a fountain. That ego is the one, think of it as kind of, I'm pointing this way because usually people think of it as being part of your left brain, is the one that makes sense of the world to you. But the ego is trying to make sense of the world through analytical, critical, rational, logical methods. And sometimes you can get stuck there. And that ego then triggers an emotional reaction in your body. So the ego says, oh, my toilet is overflowing. Your body goes, oh no, that's going to be $1,000. That's going to be this is going to be that. We're going to catastrophize, right? And then the ego is going to be like, I know this is going to be the end of the world. Oh my gosh, you don't have that kind of money in the bank. What are you going to do? You should just turn off this toilet and never use the toilet again. And then you talk yourself out of that catastrophe. You talk yourself out of that hole, right? People who know how to reframe, the ego says, toilet is overflowing. They go, and then they go, it's okay. It's okay. You know what? This is my opportunity. I just need to figure out how to go turn off the water. And then I'm going to assess the damage. And this may be my opportunity to go get that newfangled toilet I've always been wanting, or to, have somebody come take a look at the pipes. So they immediately go to, what is the alternative perspective? What is that story behind the story? And the reason they're doing that is because they're able to step out of the ego. They're able to step out of the protector and watch the protector and say, oh, this is a part of me that is trying to make sense of this, but it's got a particular way of looking at things. I don't have to agree with it. This other part of me is one that looks at things and feels like I can do this. I got this. This is okay. It's going to be okay. And that part of me is what I'm going to bring here so that I don't get devastated and paralyzed. Because what happens with the ego sometimes, especially the negative, critical ego, is that it paralyzes you, right? So how do you get out of that into this positive protector? Or sometimes we think of all of these as protectors. And if we can move into the higher self, the wise part of me, the wise center in me, that wise center knows that an overflowing toilet is not the end of the world. And that I can probably figure this out and figure out how to, still have a toilet I can use. Maybe it might be a couple of days, but then, after that, I'll have a toilet again.
Awesome. As you're describing the protectors and the internal dialogue, I'm picturing Inside Out. Yeah. I love that movie with the joy and the anger and the sadness. don't let the blue sadness. I like joy because she's like, don't touch that. Don't touch that. And sadness, will touch it and it turns dark. It's such a good visual for, I think, what you were just explaining, for sure. Yeah. And I was picturing when you were talking about the water, like, a stream, like a waterfall, in Hawaii, like a sewer. Yeah, get out of there. Get out of there.
So why don't you answer the same question? How did you learn to reframe? And what do you do? Concretely, what do you notice in yourself when you go from toilets overflowing to learning to reframe?
Well, you asked me how, and my immediate response is probably going to go to why. Why I learned to do it was to help give myself a pep talk and to reassure myself that there were other ways. So the how, the why made it necessary. I'm still not sure. I would have to think about the how I went about it, but the why I went about it was to help overcome some difficult situations that I was in with my external circumstances that were brought to me. So I would say that's how, well, that's why. How?
Well, can I offer a couple of thoughts on that? Because I've known you and talked to you about this. Like you said, I'm walking 5 miles a day. And I don't know if you've achieved the 100 miles yet, or if you're headed for the 100 miles.
I did.
And then you said to me, that clears my head. It takes you out of the situation. You are suddenly in nature and you're meditating. I mean, it's a meditative practice.
It is. Yes, for sure. And I go where the big trees are. Yes. So the how, the why was necessary for the how, for sure. So, and I think you can start and interrupt a thought process. You can begin again anytime. Right now, 5 minutes from now, tomorrow, today, yesterday. If in my world 3 days ago. Just evaluate what isn't working for you, and then you make a change. I didn't like the way my body shape was turning when I'm testing all these sweets. And I thought, well, I need to act, and I injured my knee. So, well, I can go walk and I can balance. We have choices and we have power over those choices. And I think that's a big one for me for reframing too, is knowing that you have the power and choices to make on what you think about, what you focus on, and what you decide to do with your time, energy, attention, and talents.
So there's a Bible story, and I don't know if I'm going to remember this accurately, but it's, this person that's stuck on a roof, there's a flood, and he or she's praying to God and saying, send help, or, rescue me, please help me. And this helicopter comes by, and this person waves it off and says, God's going to take care of me. This boat comes by, waves it off, saying, God's going to take care of me. And then I think eventually God says, I sent you a helicopter, I sent you a boat. And so what I take from that story is, when you look to somebody else, when you look outside of yourself for help, and help is not coming, then you're helpless, you're powerless. And what I hear in your story is that at a very young age, you realized help is not coming.
No.
And at a young age, what we have is that innate spark in us, that life force that says, I want to live, and I want to survive, and I want to thrive, and I want to flourish. And that life force then says, okay, if help is not coming, it's on me. I'm going to figure this out. And I think you learned it so early and so often that it's so automatic now, right? And if you never learned it in childhood, that's okay, because all you have to do is make it so often that it becomes automatic. You may not have the so early part, but if you have the so often, if you do it every day, and it can become a conscious practice. And one idea that I often tell my clients that I work with is, when you're stuck in that dark, stormy, critical, negative ego voice, write it down. Just write it, just download it onto paper, onto a computer, and then walk away. Come back an hour, a day, a week later, read what that part wrote, and then write from the voice of wisdom, compassion, love. If you can't imagine that voice in yourself, imagine somebody talking to that negative ego, okay? And write from that person's voice. Channel your grandma, channel that favorite aunt or uncle that was always that voice of positivity, wisdom. Channel God if you have to. Channel a celebrity. Channel somebody that you consider wise and loving, and imagine them talking to that part of you. Write down what they would say. You do that on a daily basis, and it doesn't have to be very long. It could be 2 minutes of writing on the left-hand side of this page, or maybe the negative voice writing, and then 2 to 5 minutes of the positive voice writing. You do that every single day. You will then make that voice, that flip, automatic.
Very nice. That reminds me, my sweet daughter, so talented and so wonderful. She said something that was negative and derogatory towards herself. And I've done so much work that it just can't happen in my presence. It just can't. I won't allow it. So I said, whoa. Let's tap the brakes. What I do this to buy myself some time. Let's tap the brakes for a minute. Like, okay, Ruby, I need you to imagine. Let me get a picture of sweet baby Ruby's face. And so I'll put, would you ever say what you just said to yourself to that sweet baby girl? She's like, no. I said, then you're saying it to her. And she's like, and you know what? I've thought about it when you were talking. She's definitely calmed down with some of those articulations of frustration of saying, whatever, oh, that's so dumb, that's so stupid, or whatever. It's like, but it's not. So whatever you can do to help with the self-talk, I think is helpful. It's what we
So
say to ourselves.
I completely agree. And I was thinking we should probably stop this video here so we don't go on for too long. But one of the things I want to invite our viewers to do is, the idea of pivoting and changing this internal voice and reframing is not easy. It's not overnight. So I just want to acknowledge that. And if you have difficulty doing that, let us know, comment on it, because also being able to just share, this is partly what you're doing with Ruby, being able to have somebody respond to your feelings as you're having them and validate them, and then say, okay, let me teach you how to reframe, is so powerful. So if you're having difficulty, if you want to comment on this video, look down there and you'll see a place where you can comment, and we'd love to hear from you. Okay. And so we'll come back with more of these videos from time to time. We hope you really enjoyed this. And Mindy, do you want to have the last word on this one?
I just want to say thank you.
All right.
I hope it helps.